The first person I spoke to every morning was usually a bronze elevator. Doors opening, I would say into a recorder, then wait for the old machine at the Seoul Museum of Design to prove me wrong. It shuddered, considered its options, and opened with a resentful chime. My job title was Accessibility Coordinator, which meant I wrote audio descriptions, arranged Korean Sign Language interpreters, argued about wheelchair ramps, tested caption screens, and explained to architects that beautiful staircases were still staircases. On exhibition days, I kept spare batteries in one pocket and ginger candy in the other. I liked the work because access was practical. A promise meant very little until someone could enter the room. At 30, I lived alone in a narrow office-tel in Mapo, 5 bus stops from my younger sister's ceramic studio. My shelves held museum catalogs, crime novels, and mugs Yoon Ha-jun had made while learning a new glaze. Most leaned slightly to the left. Nari claimed this gave them character. I claimed it made coffee dangerous. She was 25, deaf since childhood, impatient with people who confused deafness with fragility, and capable of arguing in Korean Sign Language with enough speed to make professional interpreters request water. Our parents had died 6 years apart, leaving me with their caution and Nari with their refusal to lose gracefully. I helped with paperwork, translated when she asked, and interfered when she did not. She loved me. She had also threatened to fire me as her brother twice that month. The problem began when a retaining wall collapsed behind her studio in Mule. A redevelopment company had excavated too close to the old building, ignored 3 safety complaints, and sent concrete dust through the back windows. No one died. That phrase appeared in every official report, as if it erased the crushed kiln, the ruined work, and the metal shelf that trapped Nari's right hand for 40 minutes. Her fingers healed badly. The surgeon said another procedure might restore full movement, but the clinic wanted a deposit we did not have. Insurance blamed the building owner. The owner blamed Baekwon Urban Development. Baekwon sent a courteous settlement offer that would cover the surgery if Nari signed a confidentiality clause and withdrew every complaint. She tore the offer in half. I taped it together because our legal aid lawyer needed the evidence. That was our relationship in miniature. On the morning of the museum's Winter Design Gala, I found Nari in her temporary studio, glazing a row of blue ceramic buttons. She had rented one bench from an older potter, and her supplies occupied 3 plastic crates beneath it. Cold light came through the factory windows. She signed, they increased the offer. I put down 2 coffees. How much? Enough for surgery and a new kiln. Not enough for silence. Her right hand moved more slowly than her left, but the signs were exact. I asked whether she wanted me at the meeting with the lawyer. No. You have the gala. I can leave early. You always can. That is the problem. I frowned. She pointed the bamboo tool in her hand at me. You keep making your life available whenever mine becomes difficult. Then you look surprised when I use it. That is a very unfair summary, I said aloud. She raised one eyebrow. Speaking did not help your argument when your opponent could read lips and ignore your tone. Nari wanted to apply for a 6-month ceramics residency in Icheon. I wanted her surgeon close, her temporary studio accessible, and her phone location turned on. She called my suggestions a cage with excellent scheduling. I called them reasonable. Neither of us was entirely wrong, which made the fight durable. Before I left, she handed me one of the blue buttons. A white line crossed its surface like a crack, though the glaze was smooth. For your boring gala jacket, she signed. My jacket already has buttons. Those are boring too. I slipped it into my pocket. The gala occupied the museum's central atrium, a glass-roofed space built to make donors feel taller. That year's exhibition explored objects of welcome, public benches, door handles, tea sets, hotel lobbies, ceremonial garments. I had spent 4 months ensuring every film was captioned and every display had an audio description track. By 6, the museum held 300 guests, 2 cabinet ministers, 16 reporters, and exactly 1 portable lift that refused to charge. Baek Group was the lead sponsor. Its vice chairman arrived without the usual cluster of family members. Baek Do-hyun was 36, an alpha, and known for turning his grandfather's logistics network into a corporation banks were willing to photograph. Other parts of the Baek family business remained less suitable for annual reports. Nightclubs, private security, debt purchasing, and port warehouses were managed through subsidiaries with elegant names and guarded doors. Do-hyun wore a black dinner suit and an expression that made people finish sentences early. His hair was combed back without shine. He listened to the museum director's welcome, shook the minister's hand, and noticed that the caption screen behind the stage was 4 seconds out of sync. He came to me during the second speech. "The text is late," he said. "I noticed. The wireless receiver is competing with the broadcast equipment." "Can it be corrected?" "Yes, if the television crew moves their transmitter, or I move the laws of physics. I have asked about the transmitter." His eyes rested on the earpiece looped around my collar. "Yoon Ha-jun? You read the staff briefing. I read what carries my signature. Then you know the accessible entrance is still blocked by your sponsor wall." He looked toward the marble panel displaying Baekwan's logo. It extended farther than the approved plan and narrowed the clear path beside the ramp. "Who authorized that placement?" he asked. "Someone who assumed wheelchair users become narrower at formal events." Do-hyun signaled to a man standing near the press line. Within 3 minutes, 2 staff members began moving the wall. "Thank you," I said. "It should not have been there." He walked away before I could decide whether the response was modest or merely accurate. At 8:17, a catering cart struck a sprinkler valve in the service corridor. Water burst through the ceiling above the coat check room. Alarms sounded, lights flickered, and the museum's emergency system released 3 fire doors exactly as designed. Guests were moved into the stone courtyard while staff confirmed there was no fire. December wind crossed the courtyard without regard for formal wear. My suit jacket had been soaked when I helped carry caption equipment away from the leaking wall. I gave my emergency blanket to an elderly guest and tried to type an update with numb fingers. A black overcoat settled around my shoulders. I turned. Do-hyun stood behind me in shirt sleeves. "I am working," I said. "Work does not require hypothermia." The coat was heavy, lined in dark green silk. It held the clean warmth of a person who had worn it all evening, but I refused to make poetry out of insulation. "You need it too." "My car is inside the lower garage." "Then take it when you leave." "The garage exit is blocked by emergency vehicles. Keep it tonight." He pulled the collar straight without touching my neck. His cuff bore a small silver emblem of a white crane over a pine branch. The same design had been embroidered inside the coat. His assistant approached, saw me wearing it, and stopped so abruptly that a reporter nearly walked into him. "Vice Chairman," the assistant said. His face remained professional. His ears did not. "That coat is from the Winter House." "I am aware, Secretary Cho. Madam Baek's staff will recognize it. Then they will recognize that Mr. Yoon was cold." I looked between them. "Does your family object to lending clothes?" Secretary Cho opened his mouth. Do-hyun answered first. "My family objects professionally. Ignore him." The all clear came 20 minutes later. By then, the inside of my shoes squished, and the last subway was approaching. Do-hyun's driver took 3 museum employees home. I accepted a place because the coat was too expensive to carry through sleet on a night bus, and because my dignity had already been seen wearing wet socks. At my building, I tried to return it. "It needs to be dried properly," Do-hyun said from the car. "Secretary Cho will send an address in the morning." "A dry cleaner?" "The family residence. My grandmother's tailor maintains it." Your family employs a tailor for one coat? There are several coats. That makes it much more reasonable. His gaze dropped briefly to the blue ceramic button protruding from my pocket. Good night, Mr. Yoon. I carried the coat upstairs, hung it away from the radiator, and found 3 missed calls from Nari. The redevelopment company had scheduled a private mediation for Monday. Its director, Baek Do-hyun, had warned that the settlement would be withdrawn if Nari spoke at the city safety hearing. Baek Do-hyun was Do-hyun's aunt. I sat on the floor beneath the borrowed coat and looked up at the crane embroidered in its lining. The coincidence felt less like chance than a door I had not noticed opening. Secretary Cho sent an address at 7 the next morning. He did not say that the Baek family residence in Seongbuk-dong was hosting its winter ancestor breakfast, or that half the succession committee would be present. He later insisted this omission resulted from a 7-word message written while managing a damaged gala. I believed him only because shame made him blink rapidly whenever it was mentioned. I arrived at 9 with the coat in a garment cover from the museum. A housekeeper met me at the side gate and asked whether I was Mr. Yoon. When I confirmed it, she took one look at the embroidered lining visible near the zipper and bowed until I became concerned for her back. "Madam is waiting," she said. "I only need to leave this for Vice Chairman Baek." "Of course, this way." She led me through a heated corridor into a timber hall crowded with relatives in formal hanbok and dark suits. Low tables held winter pears, rice cakes, and brass bowls. At the far end sat an elderly woman with white hair pinned at her nape. I recognized Baek Ok-sun, chairwoman of the family foundation and holder of the voting shares everyone in business magazines politely called decisive. Do-hyun stood to her right. His face changed when he saw me. The change was small. Secretary Cho, behind him, closed his eyes. I stopped just inside the threshold. The housekeeper unzipped the garment cover before I could prevent her. Green silk and the white crane caught the room's light. Ok-sun looked from the coat to her grandson. "You finally used it." "Grandmother," Do-hyun said, "do not grandmother me as if I invented the custom. Your great-grandfather did, and he was more troublesome than I am." A woman seated near the center smiled at me with measured interest. I recognized Sun-hee from the settlement letter. Beside her sat her son, Baek Min-seok, the family division president often described as Do-hyun's rival. Ok-sun pointed to the cushion beside her. "Come closer, future grandson-in-law. Let me see the man who made Do-hyun offer his winter coat." Several people began speaking at once. I remained where I was. "Madam, he offered it because a sprinkler soaked my jacket." Men in this family have always required weather to become honest. "There was no proposal." "You crossed our threshold carrying the crane and pine coat after wearing it overnight. In this house, that is the proposal." I looked at Do-hyun. "You told me to ignore your assistant." "That was poor advice," he said. Sun-hee rose gracefully. "A misunderstanding is easily corrected. Mr. Yoon may return the coat and leave. Do-hyun's engagement discussions can continue as planned." The relief in her voice warned me before anything else did. Ok-sun tapped the table with one finger. "A symbol may be refused by the person who received it. It cannot be withdrawn by an aunt who dislikes the recipient." "Then I refuse," I said. Do-hyun's eyes met mine. He did not interrupt. I placed the garment cover on the nearest empty chair. "Thank you for the coat. It was warm. It was not consent to anything else." For a moment, the hall held only the sound of a brass spoon settling against a bowl. Ok-sun nodded. "Good. A person entering this family should know how to refuse it. Eat before you go." I should return to work. It is Sunday. Museums remain inconveniently open. Min-seok laughed under his breath. Sun-hee did not. Do-hyun walked me to the gate, Snow had begun, fine enough to vanish against the stone path. "I apologize," he said, "for the custom or for not telling me?" "The second. The first predates me by 4 generations. You knew what they would think. I knew what my grandmother might think. I did not expect Secretary Cho to direct you into the memorial hall. Your aunt seemed eager for me to disappear. She has arranged for me to marry Han Jae-won, the Omega son of a family that controls 2 succession votes. The coat complicated her arrangement." I stopped beneath the bare branches of a persimmon tree. "Your aunt's company injured my sister." He showed no surprise. "I learned that at 6 this morning. And?" "Baekwon Urban Development altered its site inspection records. Your sister's claim is not the only one. Sun-hee is accelerating settlements before the succession audit." "Do you have proof?" "Enough to investigate, not enough to protect a witness who refuses settlement." "My sister is not your witness." "No. She is the person my aunt expects to frighten first." The controlled way he said it made the snow seem colder. I thought of Nari's hand caught beneath the shelf and of the clinic deposit due in 10 days. "Why are you telling me?" "Because the coat created an option neither of us had yesterday." I almost laughed. "You cannot mean marriage." "My grandfather's family charter releases his controlling shares only when the next chairman establishes a household independent of an allied family. The board decides in 4 months. Sun-hee's proposed marriage would satisfy the letter while giving her control through Jae-won's family. A marriage to you would block that alliance. And give you an accessibility coordinator with a damaged umbrella. You corrected my sponsor wall before you knew who I was. That is more useful than another obedient shareholder." "Useful is a poor reason to marry." "Most reasons in my family are worse." He did not make the offer there. He gave me attorney Shin Hye-rin's card and asked permission to send evidence related to Nari's case to my legal aid lawyer. When I said yes, he stepped back rather than walking me to a car I had not requested. At the museum, I found 6 news alerts about the winter coat. Someone from the memorial breakfast had posted a blurred photograph of me at the threshold. Business reporters knew the custom better than I had. One article identified me by name. Another connected Nari's lawsuit to Sun-hee's company. My director called me into his office before lunch. Baekwon's foundation had requested that I be removed from the upcoming accessibility exhibition to avoid the appearance of favoritism. "Did Vice Chairman Baek make the request?" I asked. The letter came from Director Sun-hee's office. "The same director whose company my sister is suing." He rubbed his forehead. "I understand. The board will review it. Until then, work from home." I was being professionally erased over a coat I had worn for 90 minutes. Nari arrived at my apartment that evening with grocery bags and fury. Her hands moved so quickly that I had to ask her to repeat herself, which increased the fury. "You cannot marry that man because his aunt is threatening me." "I have not agreed to anything." "You are considering it." I took the rice from her and set it on the counter. "I am considering whether refusing on principle leaves you without surgery and both of us without legal protection." Her expression sharpened. "Do not sell your life because I hurt my hand." "It is not only your hand. Sun-hee is interfering with my job. She knows where we live." "Then we fight her without becoming part of her family." "With which lawyer? The legal clinic has one attorney for 30 cases." Nari looked away. The settlement deadline sat between us. After a moment, she signed, "If you meet him, I come too." Agreed. The meeting took place in a glass conference room at an independent law firm, not at Baekwon. Do-hyun came with attorney Shin and secretary Cho. I brought Nari and our legal aid lawyer, Park Ji-soo, who had borrowed a suit and 5 hours from cases equally urgent. An interpreter was already seated beside Nari's chair. Nari signed that she preferred me to interpret. I refused. I am a party to the discussion, I explained. You deserve someone whose decisions are not tied to mine. Her surprise softened into reluctant approval. Do-hyun noticed the exchange. He waited until the interpreter finished before speaking. His proposed agreement lasted 10 months, 4 beyond the succession vote. We would register a legal marriage and share his residence in Hanam, with separate bedrooms and offices. 6 scheduled public appearances, additional ones only by mutual approval. No intimate obligations, no interviews about children or secondary gender roles. Physical contact required prior discussion or an agreed signal. My earnings, job, medical records, devices, and communications remained private. Either of us could terminate after the board vote or earlier for retaliation, violence, surveillance, or interference with employment. In return, an independent litigation fund would cover Nari's case, surgery, and studio losses regardless of outcome. Baek-won would place the disputed redevelopment building into preservation until the city hearing. My museum employment would be defended by outside counsel. All benefits would survive divorce and could not be reclaimed as marital assets. The surgery fund goes directly to a medical trust controlled by Nari, I said. Not by me. Nari signed, and not by him. The interpreter voiced it. Agreed, Do-hyun said. We choose the hospital, I continued. Your people do not speak to her doctors. That is accepted. Security cannot enter our workplaces or follow Nari without her written request. I approve any security assigned to me. No hidden cameras in the residence, no access to my phone, and no staff reporting my private schedule unless there is an immediate threat. Secretary Cho stopped writing for half a second. Add it, Do-hyun told Attorney Shin. Nari asked the question I had avoided. Why him? There must be easier spouses. Do-hyun looked toward her rather than toward the interpreter. He knew enough not to exaggerate his mouth movements. Because your brother refused my family in front of the people whose approval I need. If he later stands beside me by agreement, they will know I did not choose someone I could order. Nari studied him. That benefits you. It does. What benefits him besides fixing damage your family caused? Do-hyun's hands remained folded. Nothing that makes the bargain fair. Only terms that make it possible for him to leave. It was the first answer that frightened me, because it did not ask to be admired. We did not sign that day. Attorney Park took the draft, and Nari took me to a noodle shop where she explained, at great length and with insulting clarity, that protection and affection were not interchangeable. I reminded her there was no affection. She reminded me that I had kept the blue button she made in my pocket during both meetings. That proves I love my sister, I said. It proves you collect difficult objects, she replied. 3 days later, Soon-hee's lawyers petitioned to dismiss Nari's safety complaint and sent the museum board photographs of me entering the Baek residence. My director suspended me from public programs until the conflict review. The same afternoon, the clinic gave Nari a final surgery date and asked for the deposit within 72 hours. I called Do-hyun from the museum's silent captioning booth. Revise the term about employment, I said when he answered. If I lose my position, your family pays damages to the Museum Access Fund, not to me. I will not let them call my salary a marriage benefit. Attorney Shin will add it. And the traditional coat never appears at the ceremony. There will be no ceremony unless you request one. I am accepting a legal arrangement. I am not accepting your family's interpretation of a cold night. His reply came without hesitation. Understood. I looked through the booth window at the empty auditorium where I had spent years helping other people hear, see, and enter what had been closed to them. Then, prepare the final copy, I said. We signed on a Tuesday morning. Nari received control of the medical trust before I wrote my name on the marriage form. Only after she showed me the confirmation on her phone did I take the pen. Do-hyun watched that order of events without offense. When it was his turn, he signed with the same black fountain pen he used for corporate filings. The city clerk stamped our registration, looked at our 5 lawyers, 1 interpreter, and 2 security guards, and decided not to ask how we had met. Outside, reporters waited behind barriers. Do-hyun did not take my hand. We had agreed on a small nod if touch was acceptable, and a lowered gaze if it was not. He looked at me, asking. I nodded. His palm rested against mine, dry and steady. The cameras reacted as if we had set off another sprinkler. "Are you wearing the proposal coat at home?" someone shouted. "It was returned," I said. "Will there be an heir?" Do-hyun stopped. "My spouse coordinates access at a national museum and has been suspended after interference by my family." "Ask about that." The next questions changed. So did the balance of the day. Do-hyun's apartment occupied the top 2 floors of a building overlooking the Han River. The lobby smelled faintly of cedar. Inside, every object appeared to have completed a background check. The books were squared to the shelves, the dining chairs aligned, and the kitchen counter held 1 black coffee machine with no evidence that food had ever occurred nearby. Secretary Cho showed me the guest suite upstairs. "Vice Chairman Baek had the adjoining sitting room converted into your office." "Did he ask where I prefer to work?" Cho's expression became careful. "He reviewed the dimensions of your museum office." "That is an elegant way to say no." I opened the office door. A height-adjustable desk stood in the center. 2 captioning monitors, the same models the museum used, had been installed beside a video editing console. Someone had placed noise-dampening panels along the wall in a shade of gray best described as expensive weather. "Return the monitors," I said. "They belong to a company bidding for a museum contract. I cannot use their products privately." Do-hyun had entered behind us without sound. They were purchased at retail. "The company will still put the invoice in a presentation." "What do you need instead?" "My old laptop and a chair." I brought both. He looked at the perfect office, then at Secretary Cho. "Remove the equipment. Keep the desk unless Ha-jun objects to its manufacturer." "I have not researched the desk's crimes yet." "Let me know when you do." My room contained no new wardrobe, no gifts, and no framed wedding photographs. The empty shelves felt more respectful than luxury would have. I unpacked my leaning mugs and placed the blue ceramic button in the top drawer beside the marriage agreement. At midnight, I discovered the camera. It was set into the ceiling above the upstairs corridor, aimed toward both bedroom doors. I put a museum tote bag over it. At 12:10, Do-hyun knocked. "The security feed went dark," he said. "Then it works." "That camera covers the staircase." "And my door. The agreement says no cameras in the residence." "It predates the agreement." "So does theft. We still write laws about it." His jaw shifted once. "The stairwell has no secondary exit. If someone reaches this floor, the camera is the only warning. Then move it to the landing below and angle it away from the rooms." "That creates a blind area." "Yes, it is called privacy." We stood beneath the tote bag, 2 people legally married for 12 hours and already disputing surveillance architecture. Do-hyun looked toward my door. "Until it is moved, the feed goes only to the control desk," he said. "No recording. You may review the access log. It stays covered tonight. If the alarm triggers, you follow Secretary Cho without arguing." "If he explains where we are going." "Ha-jun." "Do-hyun." The use of his name stopped him more effectively than a raised voice. He was accustomed to titles because titles ended discussions. My refusal to supply one left the conversation open. "The camera stays covered," he said at last. It was relocated by noon. Our schedules rarely overlapped for the first week. I left before 8 for meetings with my museum union representative and returned after Do-hyun's dinners with succession committee members. We communicated through notes on the kitchen tablet. He preferred bullet points. I wrote complete sentences to annoy him. One Thursday, the museum board offered to reinstate me if I recused myself from all Baekwon-sponsored exhibitions. That would remove nearly a third of my work for the year and establish that a sponsor's family could define my professional conflicts. I rejected the offer. The director called again that evening. Baekwon Foundation had withdrawn from the accessibility exhibition entirely and converted its grant into an unrestricted donation managed by a third-party arts council. Without direct sponsorship, the board had no basis to exclude me. I found Do-hyun at the dining table reviewing port reports. "You moved the grant. The foundation created the conflict. Your name will disappear from the exhibition wall. People who need captions are unlikely to grieve the logo. Sun-hee will say I pressured you. She already says worse things with better stationery." He returned to the report. The act was useful to him because it denied his aunt influence, but he had chosen a structure that left the museum rather than me with the money. I could not reduce it to generosity, and I no longer needed to. Respect was visible in where he allowed authority to remain. Nari's surgery took place on Friday. She had insisted I work until the admission time, then called at 6 in the morning to ask why I was not already outside her building. I reached the hospital with coffee, her overnight bag, and 3 forms she had completed herself. Do-hyun came alone shortly before the surgeon arrived. He wore a plain navy suit and carried nothing. Nari signed, "No flowers." He watched the interpreter, then lifted his hands. His signs were stiff and basic, but recognizable. "You said hospital gifts create work." Nari stared at him. I did too. "Secretary Cho found an instructor," he explained. "I know 23 signs. Most concern exits, doctors, and tea." "Why tea?" Nari asked. "My grandmother selected the list." Nari laughed silently, shoulders shaking. It was the first time I had seen her laugh in a hospital since our mother died. The surgeon asked me a question about consent while Nari was reading another page. I answered automatically. She turned and struck my forearm with the folder. I answer, she signed. I know, it was habit. Bad habit. Do-hyun stepped away from the bed. He did not defend me or smooth the moment. I apologized, and Nari answered the surgeon herself through the interpreter. Outside the operating room, I sat with my hands locked between my knees. Do-hyun occupied the chair beside me for nearly an hour without opening his laptop. When his phone rang, he went to the far end of the corridor. "You can leave," I told him when he returned. "This is covered by the agreement, not by your presence." "I am aware." "Then why are you here?" He looked through the narrow window in the operating room door. "Because you keep checking the clock every 30 seconds. I glanced at the clock. He was right, which was rude. "Your 23 signs did not include reassurance?" "No. My instructor said false fluency can be insulting." "Your instructor sounds severe." "Your sister recommended her." Nari had arranged his lessons without telling me. The discovery made the room feel briefly rearranged. They had a line of communication that did not pass through me. The surgery went well. When Nari woke, she asked for water, pain medication, and confirmation that I had not canceled work for the entire week. Do-hyun left only after she signed that he was dismissed. At the elevator, he handed me the key to a small meeting room the hospital used for families. "Sleep for an hour. Secretary Cho will bring you back if she wakes." "Is that an order?" "A room reservation. You decide what to do with it." I slept for 53 minutes. 2 days later, Do-hyun's grandmother invited us to dinner. The invitation was delivered by an assistant, 3 phone calls, and finally OK-sun herself, who told me that refusal remained an admirable quality only when used selectively. I wore my own charcoal suit. Do-hyun noticed that I had replaced one cuff button with Nari's blue ceramic one. "They do not match," he said. "That is how people know I dressed myself. My grandmother will approve. She distrusts symmetry. Your apartment suggests otherwise. My grandmother does not live here." At the winter house, the family received us in a modern dining room rather than the memorial hall. Sun-hee sat opposite Ok-sun. Min-seok occupied the chair beside his mother, tapping one thumb against the stem of his water glass. Han Jae-won sat on Do-hyun's other side. Jae-won was 32, elegant, composed, and entirely unlike the rival I had been encouraged by newspapers to imagine. He managed his family's scholarship foundation and spoke to the servers by name. When we were introduced, he bowed to me with genuine relief. "Thank you for wearing the coat," he said. Sun-hee's eyes narrowed. Jae-won. "Director Baek, we all know I did not wish to marry your nephew. Courtesy does not require theater." Do-hyun poured water into my empty glass. "Jae-won has been objecting to the arrangement for 8 months. Quietly, Sun-hee said, like an adult. "Quiet refusal is convenient for the person who intends to ignore it," I replied. Min-seok's thumb stopped moving. Dinner progressed through 6 small courses and several attempts to discuss my body as corporate planning. OK-sun ended the worst one by asking Sun-hee whether she intended to produce heirs personally for every board seat. After dessert, Jae-won joined me on the enclosed terrace. Below us, the garden lights made the snow look blue. Sun-hee offered my father the museum hotel contract and a seat on the audit committee, he said. In exchange, I was expected to marry Do-hyun and support Min-seok after the old chairwoman died. Do-hyun would become chairman only to vote for his cousin? Or be removed in a scandal after the shares transferred. Sun-hee prefers plans with 2 acceptable endings. Why tell me? Because I recognize a person who entered negotiations while someone he loves was cornered. My father threatened to close our scholarship program if I refused. I did not refuse publicly. You did. His frankness held no flattery. Do you want help protecting the program? I want you to remember, I am not an ally simply because I dislike the same woman. I may testify to the audit, but only if the scholarships are placed in an independent trust first. That sounds reasonable. It is selfish. We should stop treating survival as a moral failure. Through the glass, I saw Do-hyun turn his head toward us. His expression did not change, yet he set his cup down untouched. Your husband dislikes not hearing a conversation, Jae-won observed. My husband dislikes variables. That sounds exhausting. He sleeps very little. The answer came too quickly. Jae-won smiled, not kindly or cruelly, simply as someone who had noticed more than I intended to show. On the drive home, Do-hyun asked what Jae-won wanted. An independent scholarship trust. In exchange for what? You should ask him. He approached you and trusted me with the conversation. Do-hyun's hand tightened once on his knee. Sun-hee uses private discussions to divide people. Then, do not help her by treating every private discussion as disloyalty. You have known Jae-won for 1 evening. I have known you for 3 weeks. Neither duration gives you ownership of my judgment. The partition to the driver remained open. Do-hyun pressed the button to close it, then faced me. Was his proposed marriage discussed? There it was, less noble than security and more human. He thanked me for preventing it. He is attractive, intelligent, and not interested in either of us romantically. I did not ask whether he was attractive. You arranged the question poorly. His gaze moved toward the ceramic button on my cuff. I have no claim on conversations outside our public obligations. Correct. I still disliked it. The admission arrived with visible reluctance. I could have teased him. Instead, I said, I disliked the idea of you marrying him before I had any personal reason to. That was not logical either. For the rest of the drive, the air between us held a new fact neither of us tried to rename. My return to the museum became official the next week. On my first public tour, a group of blind high school students tested a tactile model of the new exhibition. One student complained that the miniature entrance ramp was steeper than the real one. He was right. I sent the model back to fabrication and gave him my ginger candy as an unofficial consulting fee. Do-hyun attended without press. He stayed behind the group, listening through an audio description headset. At the final display, which featured ceremonial clothing, he stopped before a historical Baek family overcoat on loan from the foundation. The label explained the crane and pine tradition as a symbol of mutual household protection. It did not mention that one person could be surprised into a proposal by weather and poor communication. The label is inaccurate, I said. It is flattering, he replied. Those are not synonyms. In family archives, they often are. I marked the text for revision. Did you ever offer the coat intentionally? No. Did someone offer one to you? The custom applies to the family heir. That is not an answer. He removed the headset and coiled its cord with exact turns. My older brother wore that coat. I had found no older brother in the public family profiles. Where is he? Not in the archive. Before I could ask more, the museum director approached with a donor, and Do-hyun left the gallery. The city's safety hearing was scheduled for February. Nari spent her recovery collecting testimony from 4 other artists whose studios had been damaged by Baekwon construction. She refused my offer to coordinate interpreters and hired her own. She also applied for the Icheon residency without discussing it with me. I found out when a congratulatory email appeared on the tablet she had borrowed from my apartment. You were accepted, I said during dinner. She signed, I was going to tell you. After you moved? After I decided whether to go. Your therapy is in Seoul. There are clinics in Icheon. Your legal case is here. The hearing has video access because someone at the museum taught the city that travel is not a moral requirement. I put down my spoon. You used my own accessibility policy against me. You wrote a good policy. I wanted to list every reason she should stay. I could already feel them lining up, each wearing the uniform of concern. Across the table, Do-hyun said nothing. He knew this was not his argument. I signed more slowly. What do you want? Nari looked at me for several seconds before answering, to find out what my work becomes when I am not rebuilding the thing that broke. The sentence removed my prepared objections. I told her I was afraid the residency would make her recovery harder. She told me fear was information, not authority. We agreed to visit the clinic in Icheon and inspect the residency access before she decided. After she left, Do-hyun carried the bowls to the sink. Do not congratulate me, I said. I am still unhappy. You asked instead of directing. That does not require happiness. You sound as if you know the distinction. He rinsed a bowl. I know it after the damage. 2 nights later, I woke at 3 to the sound of a sewing machine. The apartment had no sewing machine. I followed the low mechanical rhythm downstairs and found a light beneath the service room door. Do-hyun sat at a folding table with the black winter coat spread before him. An old portable machine stitched through the green lining while he guided the fabric with surprising competence. The crane and pine emblem had been unpicked from one side. Loose white threads curled beside his wrist. On the table lay a bundle of postcards tied with dark ribbon. The top card showed a windy harbor in Portugal. It was addressed to Do-hyun under Secretary Cho's name. He saw me and stopped the machine. "I thought someone had entered the apartment," I said. "The machine is louder than I remembered." "Why are you removing the crest?" His hand covered the postcards, too late to make the movement invisible. "The coat will be entered as evidence of our courtship at the succession audit. The family historian requested it tomorrow." "There was no courtship when you gave it to me." "Exactly." He lifted the fabric. Beneath the removed emblem, faded stitches formed an older name, Baek Do-hyun. "Your brother," I said. Do-hyun nodded. "The archive lists you as the only son." It was revised after Jun-hyun left. The postcards were worn at their corners. He did not move his hand from them. "Did your family force him to marry?" "They tried. He was an Omega and the first heir. My father used guardianship law to declare him financially incapable after he refused. The coat became evidence that he had accepted the match." "Because he wore it?" "Because a photograph showed it on his shoulders. He had been 16 when the photograph was taken. The engagement came 10 years later." The logic was monstrous in the quiet way institutions often were. "How did he leave?" "I arranged a passport, transferred money through Secretary Cho, and told my father he had died." Do-hyun's voice stayed level. His thumb pressed the ribbon flat. "Sun Hee suspects he is alive," he continued. "She offered me Jun-hyun's location in exchange for accepting Jae-won. She does not know I have had it for 8 years. The postcards. One each winter. No return address. You could use him to prove the family charter was abused." "Yes." "And secure the succession." "Probably. But they would find him." Do-hyun cut another white thread with small scissors. "He spent half his life being treated as a family asset. I will not summon him back as mine." The jacket had not been worn because it belonged to Do-hyun. It had carried the outline of a brother erased from photographs, a proposal invented after the fact, and one act of escape that Do-hyun had protected at personal cost. He was removing the crest because he would rather weaken his claim than repeat the lie. I moved closer to the table. "Why keep the coat?" "Jun-hyun left it in my car. I told myself I kept it as evidence." "And the sewing machine?" "He taught me to repair linings. Our father disliked sons doing domestic work, so we practiced at night." The machine explained why Do-hyun's cuffs were always exact and why one drawer in the apartment contained thread arranged by color. Small habits opened backward into a life I had not imagined. "May I help?" I asked. He looked at the half-removed crest. "Oh, do you sew?" "Badly. Accessibility coordinators repair many emergency lanyards." "That is not reassuring." "Then give me the seam ripper and supervise." He did. We worked until the emblem came free. Do-hyun folded it into archival tissue, though there was no reason to protect a symbol he had just rejected. When he reached for the postcards, I turned away before he had to ask for privacy. At the stairs, he said my name. I looked back. "You may use Jun-hyun's history in your decision about the audit," he said. "Do not mistake it for a request to stay married." "I won't." "And do not tell my grandmother he is alive." "That was never mine to tell." His shoulders lowered by an amount no camera would have captured. I went upstairs carrying the knowledge that his restraint was not emptiness. It was a room built to keep other people's exits open. Understanding him made the apartment harder to cross. Before that night, I could classify his attention as strategy, good manners, or the management of risk. After seeing Jun-hyun's postcards beneath his hand, I noticed the effort behind each moment he allowed another person to decide. Effort implied desire. Desire made the remaining months less clean. I became polite. I ate breakfast earlier. I answered his notes on the kitchen tablet without jokes. When he offered to join Nari and me on the Icheon visit, I told him Secretary Cho could conduct the security review. Do-hyun accepted every retreat without asking me to justify it. By the fourth day, even Nari noticed through a video call. "You look like you are interpreting at a tax seminar," she signed. "I am at home." Exactly. I told her enough about the jacket to explain my mood, leaving out Jun-hyun's location and postcards. She listened while flexing her recovering fingers against a therapy band. He protected his brother. She signed. That is good. Good behavior is not a marriage. Neither is fear. I am not afraid of him. You are afraid you will want something after the agreement ends. The accuracy annoyed me. She smiled and ended the call before I could recover. The visit to Icheon took place on a gray Saturday. I had arranged to travel with Nari by intercity bus. When we reached the terminal, Do-hyun stood beside the ticket machines in a dark wool coat that carried no family emblem. Nari looked at me. I shook my head. I had not invited him. He signed slowly. "May I join?" Nari answered before I could. "If you carry the bags." He took both supply cases. I took one back. She did not say all the bags. The residency occupied a converted brick school surrounded by bare persimmon orchards. The director showed us an accessible ground floor studio and the local rehabilitation clinic's transport schedule. Nari tested the kiln controls one-handed, measured the workbench, and asked questions through her own interpreter. I held my concern until she asked for it. Do-hyun stayed near the door. When the director offered to name Baekwon as a residency sponsor in exchange for renovation funds, he declined before I had to object. At lunch, Nari announced she would accept the placement. I asked when she planned to move. 6 weeks. That is soon. It is also a date, not a threat. I breathed through the list of risks assembling behind my teeth. "Do you want help finding an apartment?" Her face softened. "Yes. Help, not decide." Across the table, Do-hyun looked down at his soup, granting us the privacy of not being watched. On the bus home, Nari took the window seat and fell asleep against her folded scarf. Do-hyun sat across the aisle from me. Halfway to Seoul, his head tilted back and his eyes closed. I had never seen him sleep. Without his attention directing the room, fatigue showed at the corners of his mouth. The road curved. His shoulder struck the window, waking him instantly. "You can sleep," I said. I was not asleep. "Then you lose consciousness, very professionally." He adjusted his coat. "You have been avoiding me." The directness removed my prepared answer. "I have been considering what I know." "About Jun-hyun?" "About you." He looked toward Nari before replying. "Do you want more distance?" "I want you to stop making every question easy to escape. You insisted on exits. An exit is not useful if it is the only door you offer." His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but concentration. "What other door do you want? Tell me whether you wanted to come today." I did. "Why?" "Your sister's decision changes your life. I wanted to see the place that would take her out of it each day." "That sounds like surveillance." "It is jealousy of a city. I recognize that it is unreasonable." I covered a laugh with my hand so I would not wake Nari. Do-hyun watched me, his face severe and his ears faintly red. "I wanted you there too," I admitted. "I did not invite you because wanting you made the visit feel less like mine." "Did my presence take it from you?" "It did not." "Then perhaps your fear is also unreasonable." "I did not say it was fear." "Your sister did." I turned toward him. "You two discuss me?" "She knows 40 signs I do not. The discussion is limited." The bus lights dimmed as we entered Seoul. For the remaining 20 minutes, neither of us pretended sleep. When we reached the terminal, he asked if he could take my hand before the crowd separated us. I said yes. His fingers closed around mine without urgency, a private answer inside a public place. Our first kiss came a week later in the museum's caption booth. Do-hyun had attended a closed preview for the accessibility exhibition. After the last curator left, he found me correcting a film transcript. Snow tapped lightly against the booth window. He placed a paper cup of tea beside my keyboard and sat in the spare chair. "Your grandmother selected tea as essential vocabulary," I said. "She considers it emergency treatment." "For what?" "Most emotions." I saved the transcript. "What are you treating now?" "Uncertainty." His answer quieted my humor. "About the audit?" "About whether I can ask you for something without the agreement answering first." "Try." He turned his chair toward mine. "May I kiss you?" The booth was too small for distance to remain abstract. I noticed the straight line of his tie, the faint mark where his glasses had rested during the preview, and the way his right hand stayed open on his knee. "Yes," I said. He leaned closer slowly enough that I could meet him rather than receive him. His mouth was warm from tea. The kiss began with the restraint I expected and changed when I touched the back of his neck. His breath caught. One hand rose to my jaw, paused until I nodded, then settled there with surprising gentleness. We stopped when the caption monitor changed to a bright test screen and turned both our faces blue. "Poor production value," I murmured. "I can ask the sponsor to improve it." The sponsor was removed. A serious oversight. I kissed him again to end the discussion. Nothing became simple afterward. We spent one night together in his room several weeks later, with each hesitation answered and nothing taken for granted. Mourning did not transform our arrangement into destiny. It gave us shared fatigue, a misplaced sock beneath his immaculate chair, and the knowledge that tenderness could exist without certifying the future. The city hearing approached. Nari and the other artists organized their testimony around inspection notices, photographs, medical reports, and the economic value of the work destroyed. I arranged remote captions and interpretation at the city's request, but withdrew from handling any evidence connected to my sister. The boundary frustrated me. It also protected her work from becoming an extension of mine. Jae-won secured the scholarship trust through an independent foundation. Once the transfer became irrevocable, he gave the succession auditor copies of Sun-hee's emails proposing the marriage arrangement and promising his father board influence. He told us at a cafe chosen for its many exits. "She will know I provided them," he said. Do-hyun stirred his coffee once. "Your security begins tonight. You select the firm." "I already did. They are not yours." "Good." Jae-won looked between us. "You have improved each other in irritating ways." "That is not in the agreement," I said. "The useful clauses rarely are." Min-seok contacted me the following evening. He asked to meet in the public sculpture garden behind the museum and arrived without his mother. He wore no overcoat despite the cold. "Sun-hee knows Jae-won went to the auditor," he said. "She has copies of your marriage agreement and footage from the gala courtyard. She will claim you learned the coat custom from the exhibition research and staged the proposal to secure money for your sister. That theory requires me to plan a sprinkler failure." "She does not need the theory to survive inspection. She needs it to arrive before the truth." He rubbed his bare hands together. The restless thumb I had noticed at dinner had become a tremor. "Why warn me?" "My name is on the altered site inspections." I signed what my mother placed in front of me. She said the missing safety reports were clerical duplicates. They were not. "You could testify and admit criminal liability." "That is true." He gave a strained laugh. "You make ruin sound very accessible." I make the entrance visible. Walking through remains your work. Min-seok looked toward the museum's glass doors. If Do-hyun takes the chair, my mother says he will erase our branch. If she wins, I inherit everything she did. There is no version where I stay clean. Clean is no longer available. Accurate might be. He left without promising anything. Sun-hee released the documents the next morning. News programs placed the gala footage beside Nari's medical records, which had been obtained from an insurance submission. Commentators debated whether I was a victim, an opportunist, or a remarkably organized Omega who had seduced a criminal heir through outerwear. The museum received threats. Nari's residency director was offered a donation to withdraw her place. Do-hyun's succession committee called an emergency session. Their proposed solution arrived in a leather folder. I would sign a declaration stating that I had understood and accepted the traditional proposal that all benefits to Nari were ordinary family support, and that our marriage would continue for 5 years. In return, the committee would certify Do-hyun's household and publicly condemn the leaked medical records. Attorney Shin read the declaration aloud in our dining room. Do-hyun stood by the window. I sat with my own lawyer and a divorce form Attorney Park had added to the stack at my request. If we refuse, what happens to the litigation fund? I asked. Nothing, Attorney Shin said. It is irrevocable. Sun-hee may challenge it, but the assets are outside Baekwon. My museum position? The Arts Council's structure remains. Your legal defense is funded through final resolution. I looked at Do-hyun. Then the emergency is over. For you, he said. For the bargain, not for the case. He came to the table and placed another document beside the declaration. It withdrew his candidacy for chairman unless the family charter's marriage condition was abolished and the urban development investigation transferred to an external prosecutor. You prepared this last night, I said. I did. Without asking what I planned to do. It decides nothing for you. He was right. Unlike the first week, he had not announced an engagement, moved a grant, or released a statement in my name. He had removed only himself as leverage. What do you want me to do? I asked. His gaze rested on the divorce form. Whatever leaves you certain that I cannot purchase the answer. That is still an exit. I know. I have not learned how to ask you to stay while my family is holding the door. The honesty was limited and complete. I signed the divorce form. Do-hyun's face did not change. His pen hovered for one breath before he signed beneath my name. I am not choosing Sun-hee, I said. I am removing the story that our marriage proves your fitness to lead. I understand. I will testify at the city hearing. I will also speak at the succession audit about the coat and the terms. You do not owe the audit anything. This is not repayment. Your family turned access to marriage, money, medical care, and public credibility into privileges they distribute. That falls within my professional interests. Attorney Park pushed his glasses up his nose. Please phrase it less broadly when we are under oath. For the first time that day, Do-hyun almost smiled. I moved back to my office till that night. He did not send security until I selected 2 guards from the independent firm's list. He did not call. At 11, a message arrived. The winter coat has been sent to Yoon-hyun. No reply required. I replied anyway. Good. The city hearing opened to a full chamber and 3 remote testimony rooms. Nari sat at the center table with 4 artists, an interpreter at her right, and her repaired hand resting beside a row of damaged ceramic pieces. I sat behind the museum's accessibility desk, responsible only for captions and audio feeds. Sun-hee arrived with 6 attorneys. Min-seok was not with her. Nari testified first. She described the warnings sent before the collapse, The shelf on her hand, the work destroyed, and the settlement offered in exchange for silence. When one council member asked whether her brother's marriage had funded her testimony, she leaned toward the camera. "My brother's marriage funded lawyers," she signed. "It did not invent cracked walls." She placed copies of 3 safety notices on the evidence screen. The other artists spoke. A dance teacher described warped floors. A printer presented air quality records. An elderly metal worker showed photographs of excavators operating outside permitted hours. Their accounts turned a family scandal back into a public failure. Min Se-ok entered during the afternoon session. He carried the original site log and a statement admitting he had signed altered inspections. Sun-hee did not look at him while he spoke. His voice shook. The evidence did not. "My mother told me preserving the company preserved the employees," he said. "We preserved our position and made employees absorb the risk." His admission exposed him to prosecution. It also allowed the city to freeze the redevelopment permits before another wall failed. At the succession audit the next day, I wore my museum suit with Nari's blue button at the cuff. Do-hyun sat alone on one side of the room. Ok-sun chaired the committee. Sun-hee's seat was empty after the city referred her conduct to prosecutors. The family historian asked whether I had understood the proposal custom when Do-hyun gave me the coat. "No." "Did you later accept the coat as a symbol of marriage?" "No. I accepted 10 months of legal obligations in exchange for specific protections. We negotiated them with independent counsel." "Did affection develop during the marriage?" I looked at Do-hyun. He did not move. "Yes," I said. "That fact does not travel backward in time and create consent where there was none." The room became very still. Jae-won testified about the alliance proposal. Attorney Shin presented the external investigation request. Do-hyun spoke last. "I lent Ha-jun a coat because he was cold," he said. "My family used it to make a claim over him. I then used that claim to make an offer while his sister was under pressure from our company. The agreement gave him meaningful protections, but it did not make the circumstances equal. I withdraw any succession right that depends on calling them equal." Ok-sun folded her hands over her cane. "And if the committee abolishes the household condition?" "Then judge my management, not my spouse." "Former spouse," the historian corrected. Do-hyun's eyes remained on me. "Yes, the committee suspended its decision for 12 days. During that time, Baekwon's board removed Sun-hee from every position and placed urban development under court supervision. Min Se-ok resigned and entered a cooperation agreement with investigators. Jae-won's scholarship trust hired its first director, a woman he had wanted to promote for 3 years. Nari moved to Icheon on schedule. I helped pack, following the labels she had written instead of reorganizing them into my preferred system. At the residency, she placed our mother's photograph on a shelf, set her therapy bands beside the wheel, and handed me a new mug leaning decisively to the right. For balance, she signed. "I hate it. You will use it every day." She was correct. Before I left, she touched my sleeve. "Are you waiting for the committee?" "I am not." "Are you waiting for him?" I considered lying. "I am waiting until wanting him is not confused with deciding for him." Nari rolled her eyes. "You both make affection sound like municipal policy." "Municipal policy is important." "Go home, Ha-jun." The committee abolished the marriage condition by a vote of 7-2. Do-hyun was appointed chairman, subject to independent compliance oversight and a mandatory separation between the legal businesses and the family's private security network. Ok-sun called it the first useful family argument in 40 years. Do-hyun did not contact me after the announcement. A month passed. I returned fully to the museum, finished the accessible exhibition guide, and began designing a fellowship for disabled artists with no Baekwon money attached. I visited Nari twice. I saw Do-hyun in newspapers, standing beside auditors, union leaders, and prosecutors. He looked thinner and exactly as controlled. On the 32nd day, Secretary Cho appeared at the museum carrying a parcel from Portugal. "This is addressed to both of you," he said. "Chairman Baek refused to open it without your permission." The title sounded new and uncomfortable on him. I took the parcel to the caption booth and called Do-hyun. He answered immediately. "Is something wrong?" "Your assistant brought a box." There was a pause. "Jun-hyun, will you come? Do you want me to?" The question irritated me with its familiar escape route. "I called you." Doig. He arrived 25 minutes later, snow melting on the shoulders of his coat. We stood on opposite sides of the booth table while I cut the parcel string. Inside lay the black winter coat. Jun-hyun had repaired the green lining with visible blue thread. The crane and pine crest was gone. In its place, he had sewn a plain interior pocket and fastened it with one of Nari's ceramic buttons. I recognized the white line through the glaze. A postcard rested inside the pocket. The front showed the Atlantic under winter rain. On the back, Jun-hyun had written, "A coat is only a coat until someone asks and someone answers. This one no longer belongs to the archive." Do-hyun read the sentence twice. "Nari sent him a button," I said. "Apparently they communicate more efficiently than we do." "Most people do." His hand moved toward the repaired lining and stopped. "May I?" "It is your brother's coat." He addressed it to both of us. I lifted the other side. Together we examined the repair. Jun-hyun's stitches were not as exact as Do-hyun's. They curved slightly around the new pocket, deliberate and visible. "I missed you," I said. Do-hyun's fingers tightened on the cloth. "I did not call because I believed distance was part of your answer." "It was part of deciding. The decision is finished." He waited. "I do not want another strategic marriage," I continued. "I do not want to move back into your apartment next week or become evidence that the new chairman has changed. I want dinner when neither of us is being photographed. I want you to visit Nari because she invited you, not because you hired security. I want to argue about cameras, grants, and whether your kitchen contains food. It contains tea. Your grandmother does not count as groceries." His mouth softened. "What are you asking?" "For a relationship with no committee end date." "Yes." You answered before I finished. "I have had 32 days. He came around the table but stopped an arm's length away. "May I kiss you?" I closed the distance myself. We did not register another marriage that year. We kept separate apartments and gave the relationship time to become ordinary. Do-hyun learned 40 more signs, including several Nari taught him solely to insult my cooking. I learned that his need to manage every route became worse when he was tired. He learned that offering 3 options was still a form of directing if all 3 served his preference. Nari completed the residency and chose not to return to her old studio. With 2 other artists, she leased an accessible workshop in Icheon and used part of the court settlement to build a shared kiln room. Min-seok's testimony helped the damaged tenants win compensation. His own sentence was reduced, not erased. Jae-won's foundation funded scholarships without requiring him to marry anyone. The original agreement remained in Attorney Park's files. The medical trust completed its work and closed. My museum fellowship received public funding. No promise between Do-hyun and me depended on any of them. The following winter, the museum hosted an evening opening during the first heavy snow. Do-hyun arrived late from a board meeting and found me guiding guests toward the accessible taxi line. The temperature fell while the queue moved slowly. He carried Jun-hyun's repaired coat over one arm. You planned this, I said. I checked the weather. Planning is not always a crime. The coat has a history of poor communication. Then I will be specific. He held it open, but did not place it on me. You are cold. May I lend you this for the walk home? It carries no legal meaning, no family expectation, and no return deadline. Only for the walk? I hoped for breakfast, too. That is a separate negotiation. Of course. I turned and let him settle the coat around my shoulders. The lining was cool at first, then warmed. I fastened Nari's blue button inside the new pocket and slipped my hand into it. Do-hyun's hand met mine there, hidden from the cameras and held only because I closed my fingers. Together we stepped beyond the museum lights, leaving 2 sets of prints in the fresh snow.